Good afternoon, members of the media, fellow Tobagonians, concerned citizens of Trinidad and Tobago across our Twin Island Republic, and to our diaspora. I take this opportunity to welcome you today to our press conference for June 25th, 2025. I am Kate Trotman, Vice Chairman of the Innovative Democratic Alliance and Shadow Minister to the Tobago parliamentarians. This past week saw heightened attention on the mid-year budget review and the Tobago House of Assembly's 2025-2026 budget submission. Today, I am joined by our political leader, Dr. Denise Oyefat Angus, not for political banter or partisan spin, but to deliver clarity on these matters. Let us begin with the mid-year review. While the nation was engrossed in the central government's presentation, for us in Tobago, there was cautious curiosity. Would we be treated with the same scant courtesy as usual, or with a new level of respect? At first glance, it seems that the latter prevail. And we acknowledge our two sitting MPs for finally breaking the silence and speaking with conviction on Tobago's behalf in the national corridors of power. For many Tobagonians, their voices in Parliament provided a long overdue visibility of Tobago and our gripping issues. They sought to open the eyes of the national public to Tobago's challenges so that they can better appreciate the rationale behind Tobago's budgetary request. But while a passionate plea was made, it must move beyond evoking national and public empathy to catalyzing institutionalized solutions that foster economic diversification and development. A total national budget supplement of $3.14 billion was presented, from which Tobago received direct funding amounting to $134 million. This comprised $32 million in supplementary expenditure for operational use. It also included a $102 million loan via CAF for coastal protection projects. We also saw a $621 million for Tobago-based projects executed by national ministries with the coordination of the Tobago House of Assembly. But what do these numbers really mean in practice? The $32 million is what is readily accessible to the THA for discretionary spending, and only $32 million. We would hope that this would go towards settling debts to suppliers, contractors, service providers, and addressing urgent local needs. And this is where I want to make a plug to the THA for looking into the sanitary conditions of the washroom facilities at the Milford Court Plaza in Bonaccord. Not only does this facility require urgent attention to have it cleaned, repaired, and restored to functionality, but it also needs to look at its long-term maintenance. And to ensure this, one should consider giving to this community this facility to operate. This is a step in empowering the community to manage its assets in its own interest. Let us look at the $102 million, the CAF loan. This is not free money to me. This is a tightly defined agreement with specific uses and strict terms. And here is what Tobagonians need to know. It is a loan designated for large-scale coastal protection work at Pigeon Point, Grange Bay, and Back Bay. These areas that are under the threat of erosion, the impact of climate change. It is to be noted that CAF loans are milestone-based. That means Tobago does not get a lump sum up front. It gets funding only after proving that the steps and phases it has completed based on the agreement with CAF has occurred. Stringent oversight is also required. Every dollar spent must be matched with the engineering plans, tendering process, and procedural rules agreed to with CAF. And this is why serious oversight on this project must be in place. If the Tobago House of Assembly uses CAF loans for anything outside of the approved projects, the consequences can be dire. We can face legal and financial blowback. CAF may freeze disbursements, demand payment, or initiate arbitration. Misuse could also affect Trinidad and Tobago's access to future international financing. Misuse could also show up in CAF's audit, possibly triggering financial freezes and political fallout. These funds cannot be redirected to roads, schools, or any general expenses. CAF loans must follow strict multilateral lending rules, just like those from World Bank and the IADB. Local misuse could also violate financial laws. It could invite oversight from the Auditor General or trigger legal action. This CAF loan is not a blank check. It is a blueprint with rules. If we break them, Tobago pays the price dearly, both in reputation and development progress. And I want us to remember that this is a loan, a liability that we are obligated to repay with taxpayers' money. We must move past the culture of who give us what, and instead build systems that ensure rigorous preparation, community-informed priorities, and results-based spending. So, we have access to $134 million that must be judiciously managed to ensure that we meet our obligations and avoid waste and mismanagement that can trigger international sanctions and result in embarrassment to both the island and the nation. The threshold is very high for us as an island to manage our first international loan facility with due care and meticulous oversight. It is to be noted that it seems that we have great difficulty in staying within the parameters of defined projects. We don't seem to have a good track record with that. And that is if the $17 million ambulance fiasco is the benchmark we use for going forward. But we may ask ourselves the question regarding the $32 million. Why so little? A mere 1% of the National Mid-Year Review budget. The THA originally requested an additional $440 million in this budget. The difference between the 5.9 that was requested in the 2024-25 national budget and the 4.35% it received. And it was forced to withdraw this request. One therefore questions why. Did the Did this request lack credibility necessary for serious budget negotiations? In the end, we do not know what the final ask was, nor how it lines up with what was actually given. I want us to note that while relationships do matter, they do not replace rigor. The administration must come to grip with the fact that it cannot substitute preparation and documentation with sentiments. Its request must always be grounded in clear justification, data-driven projections, detailed timelines, and measurable community outcomes. That is why the idea is calling for all budget submissions, initial and supplemental, to be publicly debated in the legislature before submission to central government. A standing legislative committee to oversee all externally funded projects, including the CAF loan, and strong community oversight and resource control mechanisms so that residents can have a direct influence on how allocations are used. True autonomy is not just performative, it is also procedural. It is not just about how well we do, but how we do what we do. Tobago's participation in national development cannot rest solely on cordial relations between leaders. It must be enshrined in the law. IDA therefore supports constitutional reform to institutionalize and cement Tobago's autonomy. A Tobago-specific budget allocation formula, and the Community Bill of Rights empowering local communities to manage public resources, participate in planning and development, and to access budgets transparently. True autonomy must be extended beyond Scarborough to every village and household on the island of Tobago. Let us stop thinking in scarcity and start thinking in systems. We must abandon the binary have or have not and adopt a new fiscal policy, new fiscal philosophy. Budgets are not merely allocations. They are contracts with the people. Development funds are not just gifts. They are tools of nation building bounded by laws and ethics. And borrowing is not a shortcut. It is a long-term obligation demanding performance, transparency, and results. This mid-year review should not be considered as a victory lap. It is a test. We can either accept the allocation and be satisfied with it, or we can choose to build a Tobago that will never again have to beg for what it deserves. This THA administration and the Tobago MPs have been championing the aspiration of Tobago becoming the greatest little island on the planet. This requires a commitment that moves beyond the old paradigms, the old way of thinking that have kept us stagnated for so long, to embrace innovative approaches to propel us forward. That dream must come with grounded, rational thinking. For instance, when debating health facilities, the question shouldn't be whether a 23-bed hospital is too small. The question should be, are we building a healthcare system that prevents illness and supports long-term wellness? This is how nations develop, not just by building infrastructure, but by changing how we think about progress. Tobago is half of this nation, and for us to be meaningfully engaged in national development, equality of status must be operational and not just aspirational. We must become empowered citizens, not just equally served, but equally seen in the national development strategy. That means proportional and needs-based allocation, oversight structures that ensures delivery, fair and transparent access to national capital budgets. We must not only have equity in terms of revenue allocation, we must also take responsibility for bringing solutions to national challenges and servicing liabilities that fall within our remit. Then and only then will equality of status be truly achieved. The idea is committed to building systems that serve the people, systems based on fairness, clarity, and inclusion. Tobago deserves more than a headline. It deserves an appropriate framework to foster true development. I therefore urge us as a nation to arise in reason and principle. The acrimonious behavior that we see displayed in the discussions in Parliament at this time is bluster that is wearing on the soul of this nation. I say to our leaders, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, especially our children, the future generations of this land, who we have challenges with now in terms of school violence, they deserve better than this. To the people of Tobago, let this moment of seeming satisfaction not be the peak, let it be the foundation. Let us build Tobago the right way, with systems that work, communities that lead, and institutions that endure. I thank you very much, and therefore I'm open to any questions you may have. Okay, it seems that there are no questions. So at this time, I would like to call to the podium Dr. Denise Soyafat Angus, the political leader of the IDA, for us to look at, with deep insight and great clarity, the THA's presentation of its 2025-2026 budget. Dr. Angus, podium is yours.
Let me say a pleasant good afternoon to everyone. And again, thank you so much, Ms. K. Trotman, for that comprehensive, in-depth overview of the midterm review and the passionate call for us as Tobagonians to really start seeing the bigger picture. So I do thank you for that. But after we've been discussing with many Tobagonians, the buzz, what the budget bring and all of that, I want to share with you some of the issues that they felt mattered to them the most, and not just attempt to dissect the whole, budget as it is, because I know that in various areas we're going to have the divisions adding more meat to the very meager bone that we have been thrown so far. Let me begin by congratulating Secretary Petterline Roberts on delivering her maiden speech as the first female Secretary of Finance in the history of the Tobago House of Assembly. It's no small thing to take up that role, and breaking new ground for women in leadership is something every Tobago woman, daughter, son can feel proud about. The path is never easy. I certainly recognize and respect that. But all of us know that leadership isn't just about ceremony or pretty words. It's about truth, substance, and the courage to face hard facts together. Walk with me a little. Imagine something, closer to home. For many of you, you may remember my days of being in the doctor's office. Imagine you brought your mother to see me at the office and for her annual checkup. She's looking well, smiling, chatting, doing well. And when I examined her, I noticed that her voice is trembling a bit, her blood pressure is seriously, concerning low, and her heartbeat is a bit irregular. If I told you she looks good, maybe she just tired, just get her some rest, would you feel safe about that? I don't think you would appreciate that. I don't think you would think I was doing my job. And I know you would want the full truth about what is happening. You'd want to know the risks, the treatment, and how we are going to protect her for tomorrow. And that's what real care means, not empty reassurance. And that, Tobago, is what we need from our budgets. An honest diagnosis, not just fancy words or pretty pictures. Let's stop the vibes and get to the facts. This budget, like the young people say, might look good on TikTok, but try paying for Wi-Fi with it. It ain't gonna work. So let's put aside the wrapping paper and look at what's really inside. The real thing on everybody's mind: work, food, sending the children to school, buying books, making ends meet. I know plenty of you are wondering, will this year really bring better jobs? More money in my pocket? Let's break it down together. Note I said better jobs, not just more jobs. While we admire that the administration is taking steps to plan by launching an advanced project of a strategic development planning pathway for Tobago 2025 to 2045, it's clearly doomed to fail. It would just be another package to be put on the shelf, that is going to get dust. And why do I say that? I say that because they announced that this is to be launched internally in June of 2025, a few days away, the end of June, but yet there's been no community consultations. I don't know if you've been consulted about this, but clearly this is the biggest secret to date, right? And if you do not get Tobago's involvement in planning our future, whose future are you planning for? Your own? You have to get involved with us, involve the people, and then you will have something credible that everyone will be working towards. We cannot continue to just plan behind closed doors with some kind of fairy tale future that you want to deliver to us. So let's move on. They have stated, the budget states that 7% is what really Tobago needs to begin, really turning us around, doing something with what we have to turn around as part of our economy. So if 7% is what you need, why are you asking for 5.9%? You know, if we are projecting ourselves as a responsible Tobago House of Assembly, we would expect to hear, well, we are going with 7%, we expect to get 5.9% from the government, the rest of the monies, we are going to go after grants, we will have loans, we expect to get how much back from the quarry, and some of the other investments we expect to be seeing fruit from. None of that is there. You know, we understand that the quarry is going to be back up. Why aren't we hearing about projected revenues from the quarry? We also would expect that you will be demonstrating to central government what projects would be of interest that would also help them to treat with their challenges of diversifying away from an oil and gas economy. It is time that we not just say we want to walk side by side, but that we begin to walk upright and take responsibility for our own space. That is the kind of forward-thinking budget we need to be seen in 2025 if we are expecting to go somewhere. And if you take note from the government, that is what they do. They say this is how much we need to run the country. They say this is where we're going to get this amount from revenues. We will borrow this amount, and that is how we go forward. So if we intend to walk side by side, this is what we expect to see in a budget being presented, and not folding our hands and expecting 82% to just drop in our laps, and that is what we're willing to work with. Let us start to behave like adults in the room. The government, they need us to think bigger. Yeah, that is the only way we are going to be respected. They need us to think bigger and provide solutions to the country's problems. We are half the country. We're not talking about size or numbers. We are half the country. It says Trinidad and Tobago. So side by side is not only about money to be given, but also about how we intend to contribute meaningfully to the national purse and the diversification efforts. So let's move on to some more statistics. According to the statistics in the budget presentation, Tobago now has 5.9% of the national population. That is about 80,712 people. And that is why the administration says they are requesting 5.9%. Okay. But what they have not explained in the preamble as a critical part on the state of the Tobago economy is that in 2015, the GDP per capita, which was about $4,865 US, okay? That fell by 23% to $3,593 US dollars in 2021. So from 2021 to now, what happened? And according to their statistics, well, we all know that at the national level, from 2015 to present, 10 years, we had a 23% drop in the national economy. And that is why people were so angry, because they felt the pain and they got rid of the PNM. But since 2021 to 2025, currently, under this current administration, and according to their maths, the GDP per capita, or the economy, dropped by 13%. So we see where, so telling us that the GDP grew by 3% is not the real story. The GDP could grow all it wants, but you want to know what is the effect happening on the man, the average man in Tobago, the average man or woman in Tobago, the average person. And that is what fell by 13% down to $3,115 per capita, US dollars. So the pain you have been feeling, you now understand, is because of the 13% decline, which you thought would be turned around by this new administration. That's a 13% decline since 2021, and overall, whereas in Trinidad they had a 23% decline, we are dealing with a 36% decline over the last 10 years. So when they say that Tobago is getting stronger, the numbers tell a different story. Our economy is actually sinking faster than the rest of the country. And this is not just about percentages. It's about your take home, taking home less money while costs keep climbing. It's not just about a statistic and not something to be ignored, because it means less food, higher bills, harder choices for every Tobago family. Some may even have to go without Wi-Fi and entertainment at some point. And so this isn't just about numbers. It's about a hardship, real hardship in every home. I mean, if I go to the grocery and I see the difference in how much less I can purchase with the amount of money I would use before, I could imagine that you too are feeling that pinch of a failing economy. So let's move on to another key statistic that again they have not distinguished clearly for us to understand the state that we are in Tobago, and it is critical for us to understand it if we are to begin truly turning it around. I mean, if I go in, just see a patient and start doling out tablets without even checking the vitals or checking their labs or doing further tests if something is wrong, then you'll call me a quack, right? So we have to be serious about this. We have to diagnose it with the proper facts. And so another statistic that needs further defining is the 22% tertiary educated persons that they reported on. But what they did not report to you is the increase of our undereducated persons. From 2023, it was 64%, to presently, in 2025, 68%. So what are they referring to? When we say undereducated, we're referring to persons who have gotten between 1 and 4 subjects. Okay? So we're not even counting those who were high school dropouts, those who were less than, who didn't get any subjects at all. Okay, so those are not counted in the numbers. All we're doing is looking at those who got 1 to 4 subjects. Yeah? And we have seen an increase of 4% in that category from 2023 to 2025. That is not even 4 years, that is in 2 years. 2023 to 2025, we have seen an increase of 4% in that category. And mind you, this is under the watch of 2 former teachers, the Chief Secretary and the Secretary of Education. Okay? So we have seen an increase in our children not coming out with the requisite skills to ensure that they can take up proper jobs. Okay? So they say, and we go to jobs now, right? They say they created 4,000 jobs. But what kind of jobs they create? Is it real work or just gigs to get us to the next election post? You can't pay Netflix or Wi-Fi fees with empty promises. You need real income calculated for all the year and not just for 4 months. Okay? And that's what stability means. This budget, it's all about smoke and mirrors. Some vibes, but nothing for really the future. Let's be real, a proper job gives stability, lets you plan for tomorrow, lets your children dream bigger, let you even consider having children. You know how many people saying they can't afford to have children and they're not going to have children? Listen, our budget needs to show a pathway to prosperity. But here's what they didn't tell you. When you hear about the 4,000 jobs you deserve to know, are these jobs truly year-round, or are they just mostly the 10 days on, 10 days off kind of work that pays you only when you calculate 10 days on, 10 days off, you're only getting paid for 4 months out of the year, right? So the rest of the 8 months, you're going to have to struggle. The only difference is they're stringing it out over the year, and that's if you're lucky, because some people, they are called for 2 rounds and then they don't get called back. So ask yourself, are you comfortably paying your rent, your grocery bill, your children's school supplies with that? For many, it means months, of struggle and pain, no opportunity to get ahead, and always waiting for something a little short term, a little hustle there, here and there. That's not growth or economic freedom. That's just surviving until the next election cycle. There's no strategy here for upward mobility, no plan for training, and no permanent jobs to build your life on. So we continue to say smoke and mirrors. You need a government, a THA that is honest about what's being offered and serious about creating stable, full-time opportunities, not quick fixes for votes. And that's the real care Tobago families deserve. And that's what we are missing from this budget. Now, if I told you when you came to see me in the office that we have 21 things that we're going to go after, and it's 21 things that are priorities to go after all at once, you think you would really think I know what I'm talking about? Or you're going to be questioning me? Right? That's really what's happening here when we talk about 21 developmental priorities in one budget. If everything is urgent, tends to bring in a lot of revenue. And we cannot deny the over-reliance on the government work. These are the three main priorities that IDA sees that will guarantee the turnaround of this economy. Okay? So, 21 development priorities to us just means there's no plan. Yeah? So let's go back to facing the facts. Let's connect some of the data that has been put out with some of the monies that they say will be allocated, and you'll see why it's important to lay out the data so we could see what we need to put with it, to where to go with it. So they have 68% of the Tobago workforce that is undereducated, right? Only 22% is tertiary education trained. And we don't know how many of those are staying on the island because there is a high migration rate from the Tobago space. So that's a story for a different day. But with that 68% of undereducation that we're dealing with, only 159.9 or 160 million was allocated to treating with our human capital development. Now really, is 160 million for that enough? Can we really keep pace with the rest of the Caribbean if that is what we put in towards our development? Our competitors in their development and in their future. Okay, so we're saying 160 is not even enough to move the needle. And then we go on to another area. We look at the productivity sector. Now you're saying that you want to grow the economy and you want to have mega farms and, you know, all these wonderful things. And yet your productive sector that really drives prosperity in